speak now to the Conservative MP for Holton Price and Howden, the former Brexit Secretary, David Davis, who joins me now. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Before we get on to technicalities of this, and I know you as a computer man have some knowledge of this, how do you think the UK's done in handling this coronavirus outbreak compared to other countries?
Well, it's made a lot of mistakes. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Mr. Gove effectively admitted that yesterday. But the truth is, pretty much every Western nation has made quite big mistakes. The countries that have done well have been the East Asian ones, Hong Kong, Singapore to some extent, South Korea, Taiwan, the best in the world, by acting very, very fast and very decisively, whereas the entire West has done differently, I'm afraid. So we've had a pretty mixed opening aspect of this, but in a way that's not surprising. I mean, you know, this is a problem they've never faced. No Western governments have faced before. The data was terrible in the early days. We've got a lot of data now, but the data in the first few weeks was really unreliable. We're relying on China, who we know has been somewhat less than truthful about it all. So there'll be quite a lot of mistakes made, but I think by the sounds of it, the government's learning some lessons and catching up on it.
Now, on this question of tracing, there are basically two ideas of tracing. There's one idea that's been pioneered by Apple and Google, now adopted in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, which basically makes people do it on the ground and the information is not sent back to HQ. The plan which the government has is to send information back to a centre. Which one do you think is the one to go for?
Well, interestingly, I mean, you mentioned some of the European countries. I know Austria and Estonia, and I think Germany as well, first looked at a centralised one and decided it wouldn't work, and for a variety of reasons, and then went for the decentralised one, the one that works from phone to phone. And that's my preference, to be frank. One of the reasons is the biggest measure of impact will be uptake. Uptake's pretty much got to be voluntary, and it's been quite low around the world. I mean, Singapore, for example, which is a pretty compliant society, they're used to a more authoritarian state than we are, has 20% uptake. And the effectiveness of this is the square of the uptake. So 20% gives you about 5% effectiveness. 50% gives you about 25% effectiveness. 80% will give you rather more. So they need high uptake. The other thing I'd say, just apropos of that, is that they're going to have a very sizable manual system anyway. Because even at 60%, you've got 40% not using it. You've got 40% of the people at the other end, as it were, not using it, not as recipients. So you're going to need a big manual aspect as well. But my preference, at the end of the day, is a decentralised one, both for reasons of justice and liberty, but also for reasons of people being willing to use it. People will be much more willing to use it if they think their data is completely secret, completely private, and operates only out of their phone.
And what are the civil liberties concerns you have?
Well, it's not just me. I mean, it's a more general concern that the data will be kept, that they'll have data about people's movements, all that sort of thing. And people are suspicious of that whenever the state does it. I mean, again, there are ways around it. I mean, many of these, not just, I was going to say Singapore, but not just Singapore, a number of them have basically set the data to destroy itself after 21 days, because that's all you need. After 21 days, it's irrelevant. You've passed through the phase in which you can do anything about it, and that might be a way of improving it.
South Korean experience, which system do they use? Is theirs centralised or localised?
They use everything. I mean, they use CCTV, they use some phone tracking, but they use an awful lot of phone notification. I mean, one of the things they do was to publicise where there had been people who were infectious, so that even if you didn't have a mobile phone, you'd be able to look online and see whether you travelled that particular tube route at that time, or whether you'd been on that train station at that time, or wherever it was. They threw everything at it. But of course, for them, it was they kept it under tight control. So they've been able to keep the economy running. So they've at least got that advantage out of it. By doing it this late in the day, we are sort of losing both ways. We're losing in terms of restriction of effectively being kept at home, and also losing individual privacy.
And as far as participation is concerned, obviously, initially this is going to be voluntary. You need a lot of participation. But are there enough smartphones out there? I mean, I think about a third to a quarter of the population don't have smartphones. So how can the system work?
Well, that's right. That is a problem, and also quite a lot of children don't have smartphones. Some do, but most parents don't let them have them, and they will be a carrier too, particularly when we go back to school. So, as I say, you come back to the fact you're going to need a very sizable manpower requirement behind this to do this manually. I mean, if you haven't got a smartphone, or even if you have, you're going to need to have a conversation to say where you've been, and the government's going to have some sort of agency to follow up on that and find out who else has been in those areas. I would expect the government to notify the people like Vodafone, the telecoms operators, to tell everybody who's in that area, which they know, at a given time, go and have a test. So you got that. And my hunch is that the government's been talking about 18,000 person strong agency to do this. I reckon it's going to be more like 50,000. That's more in line with what the Americans are thinking, and it will be at the end of the day, it will depend far more on the individual follow-up than it will on the phone.
And just finally, are you, as a parliamentarian, are you going to be arguing this out in Parliament and saying, look, we really need to rethink and move forward with a different testing system?
Well, truth be told, it's very difficult to do that. We don't have much opportunity at the moment, but as far as one can, yes. But the one of the effects of the social distancing that we've done for Parliament is basically to take all of the impetus out of Parliament. It's much easier for a minister to turn up and not have the sort of time you would have if you're doing a policy that Parliament didn't like today. So, yes, of course, I'll be pursuing the matter in terms of what I'll primarily argue. I'll tell you now what I'll primarily argue to the government is, all right, if they're going to go to the centralised system, at least give a guarantee of a couple of things. One, the data will be destroyed after a period, 21 or 28 days, something like that. And two, as soon as they don't need it anymore, this system will go. They won't maintain it in place. They can keep the law on the statute book, and we can reenact it the moment we have another problem like this, which we may have in another few years. But they won't, as a matter of course, leave it there. Those two things are going to be absolutely fundamental, because if they don't do those two things, I don't think the take-up will be anything like 60%.
David Davis, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.